If I don't have a new problem, I'm bored. I'm always looking for like, what's the next problem that I need to help people solve? I ingested nothing but positivity for 30 days. And now I can't be triggered by anything.
Where does the adversity come into play here?
I think adversity is very, very helpful for us as human beings. We have to have something to push against. You can't be boring. You have to have something to say, and it has to be entertaining at some level. 4,108 weeks, that's how many weeks that most people get on average. You probably don't want to spend your time being negative, complaining. If you're going to lie to yourself, tell yourself really good lies.
I have a few people in my life that I learn from every time we meet. And these people spend all their free time reading, studying languages, traveling, learning fascinating things. So every time we meet, it's like a source of profound knowledge opening up for me. So I'm eagerly tapping to that source every time so we can spend hours talking and dreaming. I'm so grateful that I had met these people and now I have them in my life. Although I met Anthony Iannarino just a few times before our interview, every time I read Anthony's blog or books or watch his videos, I have the same feeling of the source of profound knowledge opening up for me, like on those evenings with my friends. So my today conversation with Anthony is to give you guys an opportunity to tap into the same source of knowledge and wisdom that Anthony has. And that source by default has the name, and the name is growth. So lay back and enjoy my conversation with Anthony Iannarino. Thank you and enjoy the episode. If you had to summarize your entire approach to sales or to business into an elevator pitch, what will it be?
If I had to distill it to just one idea, it's value creation inside the sales conversation. That would be the one thing that I care the most about. If I'm talking to you about anything around sales, I'm going to ask you about what kind of value do you create for the client, not after they buy, before they buy. So what do you do in that first meeting, in that second meeting, and how does it affect the client? So that's what I care most about, value creation in the conversation.
Is it fair to say that this value creation is kind of one fundamental methodology that is then explained and branched out across all books and videos and training that you do into sub-methodologies, sub-frameworks of that one connected kind of structure that is fundamental to the entire vision?
That's exactly right. I've written 4 books for salespeople and 1 for leaders. And basically it starts with a competency model, then gaining control over the conversation, and then value creation. And then this one is really about leading the client in a way where they feel like they're being taken on the journey instead of trying to figure these things out by themselves. So I think that what I do is consultative, which means I'm going to tell you how to do better business. And I'm going to give you advice and recommendations to make sure that you get what you want at the end of the time that we spend talking to each other.
When you have this fundamental idea of methodology of value creation, and then now you're expanding on the subject and adding different, more detailed, thoughtful parts of it, you mentioned just now your 6th book, right?
Yeah.
That you're currently working on. So where does that book sit in this Marvel universe of your value creation?
So at some point, like these 5 have to get pushed a little bit that way. And then I just have one book called The Negativity Fast. And that book will come out in October. And that book is about stop ingesting negativity, stop complaining, stop putting things in a way that makes you feel like it's negative. And it's been a passion of mine for a long time. I've done a negativity fast many times, but the first time I did it for 30 days, I liked it so much I did it for 30 more. And then I realized I made a mistake. And then the next 30 days, I ingested nothing but positivity for 30 days. And now I can't be triggered by anything. So I don't complain. I don't I don't frame any negative experience as negative because they're all valuable. Like even if you don't like it when it happens, it's still valuable for you. It gives you some sort of, let's say the way that I would describe it is post-traumatic growth syndrome. So sometimes when you have a negative thing happen, it actually causes you to grow.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you expand on this? So you said 30 days fasting, negativity fasting?
Yeah. No television,
Okay.
no radio, no magazines, no negative people, nothing. Like all the negativity is gone. I'm not ingesting any of it. I'm not bringing it into my body or my mind. I'm not going to do that. I did it a number of times. I've done it a lot of times. It actually, I'll tell you where I am right now. I just don't do any of it anymore. Like I don't watch Fox. I don't watch CNN. I don't watch MSNBC. I don't listen to AM radio. I don't listen to anything because I don't want the poison that you get with the fear that media gives you. So they give you nothing but fear and divisiveness. Like these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. And it doesn't really work that way. So I just don't, I never went back after I've done this a number of times. I just don't do it. So my wife is sometimes unhappy with me because she'll say, did you see this story today? And I'm like, I didn't see it. And she's like, you should probably know this. And I'm like, I went the whole day without knowing it and I'm okay. I don't think I need to know it. I can't do anything about certain things. And I like that she tells me you should probably look at this and maybe I will. But I just don't find that it's helpful to consume fear all the time. And that's what the television shows do. Like the political shows, they're all just feeding you fears.
That's true.
Why? You can be afraid already. Like you don't need anybody to help you make things worse than they are, right? And you're in a place right now where you're in a place because there's a negative event happening and you can't stop it. Now, you and I, if we could, we'd stop it immediately, but we can't. So we have to figure out how to live in a world where negative events are going to occur and how we process those things.
Who introduced you to the concept of the negativity fasting?
Can I tell you the story? I went to college when I was 26 years old. Right after having two brain surgeries.
Yeah.
And I went into political science. That was my main degree, and English literature. That was my second degree that I was working on. And I loved arguing with people over politics. I loved it. And as a libertarian, I would argue with the left and the right. So it doesn't matter. We don't share the same politics. So I get to argue with everybody.
Right.
And I enjoyed it. I actually like it because it's non-boring. It gets you, you have to be thinking and on your feet. And I like that. And I eventually was told that I should take the law school entrance exam. And I did. And I had a very, very high score on that test. And mostly because it's reading comprehension and logic puzzles. That's mostly what it is. It's just to see, can you read? And can you try to be logical about these things? I got a scholarship to go to law school. So I went to law school, a very political environment, like lots of politics.
Right.
I was arguing with professors in undergrad, and then I was arguing with law professors right after that. And just a lot of back and forth and a lot of, people being angry about things. I actually enjoyed it for a long time. But over time, I started getting angrier, and I was getting more and more angry. And I had a great mentor. His name was Mike Distelhorst. And I sat down with Mike one day. We talked to each other like a couple times a week. I'd sit in his office and we would talk. And he said, you're really angry about all these things, and there's nothing you can do about them. And I said, look, Bill Clinton just passed a law that said we're going to have a retroactive tax increase. So all the taxes that you paid, guess what? You're going to pay more after the fact. And I thought, this isn't fair. And he said, look, you can't do anything about this. You have 3 children. I had 3 children in law school. And he said, the only thing that you can do is outrun the bastards. That's what you have to do. You got to outrun them. And you give your children the life that you want them to have. And it has nothing to do with the government. And you should not be this angry. Now, I would love to tell you that I'm the kind of person that immediately recognized the value of what he said to me, but that was not true. It wasn't even close to true. It was like 6 months later, I was like, well, I am really angry. I'm
Right.
really angry about all these things that I can't control and that I wish I could control. And I told myself, I'm getting rid of every magazine articles that I have. Like, no magazines come into the house, no newspapers. I'm not watching anything. I'm going to get rid of all of it and see if I could feel better. And so I invented the negativity fast.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know if anybody else has done it before, but
Yeah.
I now have a book with that name
Yeah.
coming out in October. And I think it's really important for people to notice how negative we are. And part of it is scientific. Like, you have what's called negativity bias. We all do. And that's evolution. That's what we've evolved to be, because we have to be watching for threats all the time.
Right.
And so we're mostly negative. So you have to do something to try to turn that back the other direction. And one way to do it is to stop taking in so much negativity and not having so much negativity in you. So I was a world-class complainer. I could complain about anything. And I could find something to complain about. And all it does is make you more negative. Like, you can complain if you want to, and you might think you're helping somebody, but most of the time it just makes you more and more negative over time. So I think I invented it.
Does it affect biologically, like the negativity
yeah.
that you? So you're some kind of hormones or something in your body. It kind of works differently, right? When you. Okay.
It's physiological, it's emotional, and it's sociological. So all three of those things. So if you go without eating, you're going to get angry at some point.
Right.
You'll get hangry, right? So you'll get that. Sometimes if you just go for a run, you can't be, it's very hard to be angry and run at the same time, because you're breathing, you know?
Yes.
You're breathing at the same time. And once you're breathing well, you're not angry anymore. So you could do that or lift weights or whatever. Sometimes it's just like you're dehydrated. So people have headaches. A lot of the reasons they have headaches
Because of the
they're
dehydration. Yeah.
yeah, they're dehydrated. And if you would just drink water, you would feel better, because you're mostly made up of water anyway. So a lot of it is physiological, psychological, and part of it is just sociological. So there's all these people that we have to deal with from day to day, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of it too. So those are the things that can trigger us.
Based on your research, do some people have predisposition to negativity more than others because of some? They have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a skill, right? So you can kind of, as you said, like, you can have a negativity fasting, or you can work on the skill to be less negative, less angry, and less complaining, and kind of grow that within you, right?
Yeah. I literally don't complain anymore at all. I just never do it. It never works. But if I would give you, for the people that are listening to this, if I could just give you one thing to do, just one thing that will make you feel better, this is scientific. So in the book, there's all kinds of citations, because there's a lot of science that already exists. If you wanted to do one thing to start dampening your negativity, what you would do is start by gratitude. That's what you would do. Gratitude is incredibly powerful, so powerful. There's a guy in Pennsylvania named Marty Seligman. And Seligman wrote a book called The Hope Circuit. And he's the one that created positive psychology. Before Seligman, it was all, you're damaged somehow and we have to treat you.
Right.
And what Seligman figured out is, like, no, you can actually flourish. Like, there's a way to be positive instead of being negative like we are. And one exercise that they did with millions of people, they did this with Time Magazine. They built this website. And what they did was called 3 blessings. Okay, so this is it. So I'll give you this. You can do this today. You can do this for a number of weeks. What they asked people to do was to write down 3 things that went well for them and why they went well. That's what they did. And they said, you have to do this every night for 2 weeks. Say, if you do that every night for 2 weeks, they found out it was better than psychotherapy, better than drugs, and that it was longer lasting than any other thing that they've done. So we don't know how long that actually lasts because it keeps lasting and lasting and lasting. So if you are negative and you think, well, I'd like to feel better, practice that. Now, I've done this in one of my businesses where I've actually asked people to do their 3 blessings in a chat so everybody can say something about it. And I thought they'll do this for a couple of days and then they're going to give up on it, right? Because it's not part of their job. Yeah. They're still doing it and they like it and they support each other and it makes people feel better. That is scientific. I mean, so I have citations in the book to that. But for anybody who wants to feel better, just start writing down what you're grateful for and why whatever went good for you. It's probably got another person on the end that you're grateful for because they did something.
So work on your gratitude. Remove, the outside noise and negativity that you're receiving. Anything else that you should do in those 30 days, fasting window for people to
take in something positive.
Okay.
Like you should replace the negative sources with positive sources. So if you would pick up something, like if you were going to pick up something like Anthony Robbins or Stephen Covey or people who are positive, optimistic, future oriented, they're empowering. Those are the things. So it's like a Brene Brown. And any of those sources, those are what you should be taking in because it's a different type of nutrition. So the negativity part is poison. This part actually builds you up.
Yeah. When we talk about positive content, we don't mean the funny dog videos on Instagram, right? That's not the type of that's not the type of emotion. Okay. Got it.
No, we want something that's feeding
more meaningful,
really
right? More empowering, right? Okay. And then, so once you've done that for the first time, obviously you're doing that on a regular basis right now, but the first time you've done that, right? What was that profound effect that you had on you on yourself? What had changed or improved in you after that first initial run?
The first 30 days, I felt better. I just felt better. And it was mostly because I've eliminated things that would make me unhappy. So they were gone. So they just weren't present in my life. And so that made it easier. The next thing that I would say, at 60 days, I had to go through an airport and CNN was on all the televisions. And for the first time, I walked by CNN and I wasn't triggered by anything that I was watching there. So I walked right by it, didn't mean anything to me anymore, wasn't paying any attention. And I started to feel like I can be exposed to things without it having any impact on me. And after 90 days, the last 30 days was the days that I started to take in things that were, I would say, healthy, right? Healthy things to consume instead of negative things. And after the 90 days, I've not been triggered. Like, it's just hard to trigger me to be negative or unhappy about it because your life is short. Yeah. Most people don't know how short it is. It's 4,108 weeks in the United States. That's how many weeks that most people get on average. So if you know that, you probably don't want to spend your time being negative, complaining, dealing with negative events that you can do nothing about, and spending time on those things. You just have to figure out what you're here for and what you're supposed to be doing, and then you might as well go ahead and start doing that because that's all you got. You have time, but you only have so much time. We don't know how much time, but I think it's important that you realize it's short and you should be doing whatever you're here to do.
Just a few days ago, I read in one of the books of the Yoshima Mishima, I think, that the Japanese novelist. He wrote a cycle of books. The first one is The Spring Sorrow. And then so I was reading the second book of the series, and there was this character who was in his prime, very young, in the first book. And in the second book, he was already like a judge. He was 38 years old. And the first few paragraphs of the book told about him reflecting on the youth and telling that I'm already 38, and I felt like I didn't leave the youth at all. So like I am in the verge of like sort of like being there, but I don't feel it. So I kind of stuck in their middle, and I don't know why and what's next, etc. And I was like, oh wow, okay, it's just start thinking about how short things are, right? So
Yeah.
I'm, in the few years I'll be there. And I was like, oh, I'm 38 already. Like, where the hell, right? Where did my youth went, right? And
Just like that.
it's so fast.
Just like that.
We just talked about a lot of growth, but I wanted to go back to that sales part just for a few questions for us to nail some of those. So 5 books about value creation. Now you move to a bit different, something that you've been kind of with for years and something that you're currently passionate about. Do you think that, or do you have anything left in that series of the sales books that you feel like were not said or were not wrote that you would be pondering on later?
I'm one of these people that if I don't have a new problem, I'm bored. So I'm always looking for like what's the next problem that I need to help people solve. It might be cold outreach for me, for sure. And I also think that there could be an upgrade to how we coach salespeople and sales managers. And so I have some ideas about both of those. I'm looking at the science right now to see if I can write a book about adversity and post-traumatic growth syndrome. And I'm just trying to find out if there's enough there for me in the literature to have an approach that is going to be serious. But I also want to make sure that I have a story to tell. So if I have a story to tell, I might write something about that, because I think adversity is very, very helpful for us as human beings. We have to have something to push against. Did you ever see the first Conan the Barbarian movie?
I did. I think it was like 15 years ago.
Schwarzenegger?
With Schwarzenegger, yes.
Yeah, and remember when he's pushing and he ends up pushing that thing around, all the other kids they've all fell off. And
okay.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like you get bigger and you get stronger when you push against something.
Yes.
And if you're not pushing against anything, you're not getting stronger. You're not getting better. And I think the negative things that happen to us offer us a chance, if we frame it correctly, to get better. I think that's what it's there for, adversity. It's going to show up anyway. Just how do you process it?
Talking about sales, so I'm curious, did your understanding of B2B sales changed from the time you published your first book and until now? And how did it change, if it changed?
Let me see, maybe a week and a half ago, I published my 5,000th blog post. So I write every single day. I write 1,000 words every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's what I do first. And sometimes you know something, but you don't really know it. But you do know it, but it doesn't come out. Well, when you start writing, sometimes that stuff just shows up. So the first book I did, The Only Sales Guide, I knew I was doing this. It's just a competency model for a modern salesperson who's in B2B sales. I knew I was going to write the second book, The Lost Art of Closing, because I knew people needed it and they needed to understand that the process isn't linear anymore. So I did that. Nobody was thinking about value creation except for me when I wrote Eat Their Lunch, and I knew that I was going to write that. Elite Sales Strategies just showed up. So there's a video I watched of Keith Richards talking about the song Satisfaction. And he said, I didn't write it. I was just the antenna and it just came in and I just picked up the signal. And that was his retelling of the song that he wrote. And I think for Elite Sales Strategy, I was the antenna and it just showed up for me. And it was like completely formed just like that. And I've never had a book that happened like that. Like that was one where it wasn't what I was thinking. It happened And then I gave a speech, and then I decided the speech went so well, I decided I was going to publish it. That's one of those things, serendipity, it just showed up.
Why is your value creation methodology is effective?
So for 30 years, salespeople have walked into their client's office and they've said, let me tell you about my company. And then they'll spend 15, 20 minutes talking about their CEO, how charismatic that person is. They'll start talking about their global footprint or whatever else they're going to talk about. They'll show you pictures of org charts of their leadership and investors and all these things.
Right.
All you're doing is putting your client to sleep. I mean, you're boring them. Christopher Hitchens, the polemicist, said that the single sin is being boring. You can't be boring. You have to have something to say, and it has to be entertaining at some level. And when you do that, and then you go, let me show you this trophy case of all the logos that we have of clients, and then let me tell you about our product, and then I'll ask you about what's keeping you up at night. We've done that for 30 years. Now, I want you to understand something about this. Everybody believes they're differentiating from their competitors, and they're all following that same pattern. Everybody does the same exact pattern, believing that they're differentiating, and everybody thinks that they're a commodity because they've heard this conversation from everybody that's ever sat across from them. What they're trying to do is make a decision, and we call them decision makers because they make decisions. So that's what we're doing.
Right.
So if you're a decision maker and you don't make the decision very often, you make it maybe every 5 years or every 7 years, something like that. You want somebody who can help you make the right decision. So I have to know things that you don't know so that I can teach you how to make the decision. And the way that one of my friends said this, and it ended up in the book, is that people buy from people that they trust to make a decision they don't trust themselves to make. And that is the salesperson that creates value. So the one that's teaching them and educating them is the one that they believe is the most helpful, and that's the person they're going to buy from. So if you're teaching, if you're educating, if they're learning, you're in a really good spot.
I'm just fascinating about all of these conversations because it just, end up reconfirming the point of, especially in sales, being creative, being a good storyteller, being personal in a way when you do things, right? And not take it for granted as like business slides and logos, et cetera, et cetera. So that's not, the way things work anymore, right? Throughout the journey of you building your, I would call it like assets, your brand, who did you take inspiration from? What were the people or stories feeding you in the right energy and the right attitude?
There were three people that I was paying attention to at that time. One was Tom Peters, who has written a whole bunch of books, and I've interviewed him a number of times. Tom's 80 now. Great thinker, great manager guy, very, very influential to me. And part of it is just because he's so about human beings and not a lot of other things. So it's a lot about who we are and how we interact with other people. So that's very close to me. The second person that I was paying attention to is Seth Godin, the marketing guy. So, he's got, 24 New York Times bestsellers or something like that. He sells books like crazy. And Seth is a mentor for me. And I was watching him post every day. Like he would post something, and he still posts something every day. He posts every single day for, I think, I'm at 5,000. He must be like getting close to 15,000 because he started long before I did. And then there was a guy named Chris Brogan. And Chris Brogan had a really, really popular blog at one time, and he's a friend of mine as well. And I was watching them, and I decided I have something to say. And I knew I had something to say because I was looking at sales from my view in selling commodities, temporary staffing. and I thought I had something to share. So I decided on December 29th of 2009 that I'm going to get up at 5 in the morning. Now I get up at 4 in the morning, and I'm going to write. So I told my wife that's what I was going to do. And I told her in a year, I'll be doing sales kickoff meetings. And I told her how much I was going to charge for those things. And she said, I don't really understand anything that you said, but I love you and I support you. And she encouraged me to do that. So I've done that now for almost 14 years, every day. Those people were instrumental. Tom, for his love of humans and what we can do. Seth, for his thinking and his compassion around other people. And Chris Brogan was just instrumental in helping me get started blogging.
I know you are a big fan of books, and you're one of the people then when you visit your LinkedIn page, you see books, you see you reading, you quote books, you ask about the books, you are, I feel like that books play a big part of the role in your life. So who has made the more profound impact on you, the people you encountered or the books that you read?
So I would say the first person, I didn't know this until 2 months ago. I could speak when I was 9 months old. My mom had taught me how to speak, and I started talking when I was 9 months old. So that I didn't know that. I had no idea. She told me that. Yeah. She's like, you started talking really early. I had no idea. I'm still talking now, I guess. So I started and I kept going. And then she taught me to read. So at 3 years old, I could read. I didn't know that until 2 months ago. I had no idea that I could read at that time, but she told me, yeah, you love books. She read to me, and then I learned to read, and I've been reading since then. And maybe part of this is we didn't have any money. So I grew up in an apartment with my brother, 2 sisters, and my mom, 1 shower, very small apartment. She's a single mom raising 4 kids. And the only way I could get books was from the library. So I would go to the public library and I would bring out like 16 books. And then I would have to give the books back. And I never wanted to give the books back. And at some point, maybe in 7th or 8th grade, maybe I was 12 or 13, I had a teacher give me a book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which was a good book. I loved it. And then after that, I kept reading. And I told myself at some point, I'm going to be able to buy these books and I'm going to be allowed to keep all of the books that I ever have. And now I have probably 2,500 books in my house. And I'm still collecting books. And I'm glad I have this loft that I can bring books to so I can have more books. I love books. It's one of the best things that you can do for yourself, because for $25 in 6 hours, you can get the competency that somebody else spent 20,000 hours learning. I mean, you can get so much information and so many things that you could do faster than just about anything else possible. So I do that. And I read a lot of books, and I do cite a lot of books, and I point at a lot of books because I think it's a fast way to get results. And if you want to get results, somebody wrote a book for you already. The book is already there. You just have to go find the book and read it. Then you can mimic them and do the same sort of thing to get the same results that they've got. On LinkedIn, I have a post somewhere where I wrote about my biography in books.
Yeah,
and so
I read the post. Yeah,
you saw that one? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is, I will tell you the book that probably changed me the most. My dad was not around when I was a kid, but occasionally when he did come around, it'd be like my birthday or something, and maybe he'd take me to dinner or something like that. That didn't happen a lot of times, but it happened sometimes. And one day he brought me a book called Will by G. Gordon Liddy, who was the mastermind of the Watergate break-in when Nixon was president. And the beginning of the book is a young G. Gordon Liddy who's afraid of everything. He's afraid of blimps. He's afraid of rats. He's afraid of thunderstorms. He's afraid of other people. And at that time in his young life, the recounting of his tale is that he systematically eliminated all of his fears one at a time. So he climbed up into a high part of a tree and stayed there while there was a thunderstorm. He killed and ate a rat when he was a young kid to take his fear away from it. So he just eliminated all of those. And when I read that book, I was afraid. I was afraid, and I had a lot of fear. And once I saw that pattern that you can just go ahead and engage with these things, and the engaging with these things can help you get through the fear of those things, then I started to change. So I was probably 12 or 13 years old at that time. And that book caused me to become much more aggressive about dealing with my fears. And it was important for me to be able to do that too. I lived in a neighborhood where there was a lot of bullies, a lot of tough guys.
Right.
So I had to figure out what I was going to do when I was, let's say, attacked. That's the right word.
Yeah. Do you have a kind of a reality escape routine or something where you just kind of step back and go inside your head yourself for some thinking?
I do meditation, so that my introspection is partly that. So I do. I've studied with two Zen masters, Genpo Roshi and Doshin Roshi, and I've had both of them help me understand how to meditate like a Zen master does. So I've spent a lot of time with them to learn that, so I could do that. And I find it to be really helpful. I don't do it twice a day like the transcendental people. I just do it once, and that tends to work for me. So that's what I do.
How long you been meditating?
Maybe 15 years.
I'm curious, anything before and after? Any changes, improvements?
You ever see one of those snow globes that people have at Christmas time?
Yeah.
When you shake them up?
When you shake them up, yeah.
What I'm trying to do when I meditate is to have the snow all blend up, and it's at the bottom now. It's all there. It's not chaotic anymore. It also is very, very good for your cognitive functions. It vary. This I'm only telling you that that's the sciences have proven this out. Like it's very good for you cognitively. It's very good for you if you don't want to be negative. If you start to objectify these things. So what a lot of people get hung up on in meditation is they think, well, I have to have no thoughts. That is not how meditation works. It's not that you have no thoughts. That's actually called samadhi, when you're just paying attention to your breath, and it's what you do to prepare for meditation. When you're meditating, you're just noticing, like, I'm angry about this. And then you just let it go by. You're just like, I'm noticing it. And what you're doing is you're objectifying this pain in my back. Oh, I have this pain in my back, and I'm objectifying it, and I'm just letting it go by. And then some other thing comes by. And what you're training yourself to do is just make these things objects. So one of the things that we think is that what we're supposed to be doing something, but all you're doing is being the person that is watching. You're just the watcher. And so you're just watching these things go by, and they start to lose their control over you or their power over you. They just start to just wither away. And it feels really good when you can do that. And if you do it every day, it will cause you to start feeling better for sure. I have a chapter in Negativity Fast about mindfulness practice. Mindfulness practice can help you be a lot more positive and a lot less negative.
When you mentioned adversity and the importance of adversity and having something to, that you can develop against, right? The last time we spoke, just briefly about the time you had your intramural seizure and arteriovenous malformation surgery, right?
That's right.
Can you go back to this time for our listeners so that my next questions would make sense? What has
Sure.
happened?
When I was a kid, I started playing music when I was 15. I started a rock and roll band. By 17, I had a real rock and roll band. By the time I was 20, we were a good rock and roll band. It took a little while for us to get there. And I decided I was going to move to Los Angeles to pursue playing music. And I got a job when I was there, and I was working. I had a band. We all lived in an apartment together. We were actually getting pretty good. People started to leave. They got a little bit, I guess, homesick is what I guess if that's what they were. They wanted to go home. I didn't want to go home, so I was the last one there. And one day walking up to my Brentwood apartment, Brentwood's a beautiful place. I woke up in the back of a van being strapped into something. I didn't know what it was at the time, because the thing about having a seizure is that you're the only one that doesn't know you have a seizure. So the landlady saw me, other people saw me, they called and got an ambulance for me. Then I forced my way out of the ambulance because I didn't want to go with them and I didn't trust them. I thought they were trying to abduct me, but that's because I just had a seizure. So my brain wasn't working very well. And eventually my neighbor came by and said, if you won't go with them, I'll drive you to UCLA Hospital. And he drove me to UCLA Hospital. I went into a CAT scan, and then I went into an MRI, which means you're in a bad place if you have to go both through a CAT scan and an MRI at the same time. So I did that, and then I had a doctor come up, and he put up all these pictures of my brain, and he said, you have cancer on the right lobe of your brain, and we're going to need to remove it so that it won't infect the other half of your brain. And I started to argue, and I said, could I have not cancer? I didn't know another way to say it. Like, could I have not cancer? It's something else. And he said, there's a very small chance that you might have something called an arterial venous malformation, which is a group of arteries and veins that grow into a knot. Now, mine was right here, and you can probably see the scar, or at least part of it. They gave me a test. They took a tube through my femoral artery all the way up to my brain, and they sprayed it full of dye so they could determine what it was. And I had the biggest AVM they'd ever seen. So I have a very large one, which you don't really want a very large one, but you get what you get. I went home to Columbus, Ohio. The best person on earth to remove an arterial venous malformation is a guy named Dr. Tu. He's retired now, but he is the one that invented most of the procedures that people do. And I had a 9-hour first surgery where I was awake, where they went back up into that knot, and they glued it shut with an epoxy. I was the 5th person to ever have that procedure because it wasn't approved by the FDA in the United States at that time. But we were allowed to do it because they were afraid it was going to be a messy surgery otherwise. Yeah. The second day, I had an 11-hour surgery where they opened up my skull and they removed the AVM. And then later on, when I was in the recovery room, Dr. Tu came in and said, we had to remove part of the back of your front temporal lobe because it's bruised. And if we would leave it, you would have seizures for the rest of your life. And they never told me that that was even a possibility until after they did it. Maybe that was intentional. I don't really know if it was intentional or not. But when they got in there, they saw what they saw, and they did what they did. And then after that, that's part of why I was angry. I mean, when somebody opens up your skull and cuts a piece of your brain off, it's physiological, it's psychological. I mean, it's both of those things. And then the drugs that came after that, like phenobarbital, which is how you tranquilize elephants, it was horrible for me. So I think that's part of why I was more angry at that particular time. And you get what you get. So we all have things that happen to us. So that negative event for me caused me to realize you lost part of your brain. You should do something with the rest of it. That's what I told myself. So I started reading a book a day for months, trying to compensate for whatever I lost, even though there was no way to compensate for that. It's not even necessary.
Right.
And probably the thing that I should tell you about is when I went to see my neurologist. So after this surgery, I went and sat down with my neurologist. So he wasn't a surgeon. He's the guy that just making sure everything's working. He slid a piece of paper across the table to me. And he said, you need to fill this form out. And I looked at the form and it was a disability form. So it said, you can be total disability or you can have temporary disability. And I asked him this question. I said, am I disabled? And he said, you are if you think you are. And I thought, what a weird answer that is, right? Like, what a weird answer. And then when you start thinking about it, you are disabled if you believe you're disabled, and you're not disabled if you don't believe you're disabled. And I checked the temporary, and I got my disability for 3 months. And I went back to work just like that. And then I went to college at the same time. It is one of these things, though, that I think just because of the way that I was wired and my lack of fear, I just wanted whatever it was doing to me. I just wanted it out. So I asked a few questions. I asked if they were going to be able to do it, and they said they would and they could. And I just wanted it out. So
I read about this exact event of your life on your LinkedIn, and one of the last things that you wrote in that particular article was that, and I wanted to read it out loud. I have it here, like as a quote, because it's something that stuck with me that I'm kind of, just was thinking about how, powerful the thought was. You wrote that your brain is going to believe whatever you repeat to yourself, right? Whatever you believe becomes your reality, right?
True.
Since a large part of what you tell yourself are lies, you may as well choose lies that empower you. You're going to be whatever you believe you are.
Yes, I believe that with my whole heart. I believe it. I think whatever you keep telling yourself will become true for you. If you've never listened to Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret, you become whatever you think about. I mean, it's just true. The more you think about that, the more that's what's going to be in your life. So if you're negative, you're going to probably have a lot of negativity in your life. If you're positive, you're probably going to have a lot of positivity in your life. It just depends on what your focus is. And we do lie to ourselves all the time. I will tell you a story from my brother. He's a comedian. He has to drive places. And then he has to drive back after he has a gig. And sometimes he's too far away from a rest stop, so there's no bathrooms. And now he's under some pressure, right? Because he really wants to get to a bathroom. And he's always complained as he's driven. He's only ever been a comedian. He's never done anything else. He's never had a job. He started when he was 17, so he's been doing this for a long time. And he was always mad at how people drive. Like he's furious about how people drive. And then one day some guy tried to cut in front of him, and he looked at his face and he said, that guy's got to get to a bathroom. And he's like honking and he's waving him in. He's like, go, you can make it. You can make it. And he's yelling out the window to this guy. And I'm like, how do you know he had to go to the bathroom? He goes, because I've done it myself. I felt exactly what that guy was feeling. And now he's like, go on ahead, get in here. Like he made this lie to himself that everybody that's a bad driver really just needs to get to a bathroom. This is in chapter 3 of the book. Like he's got a whole page and maybe a page and a half just to teach this. You can believe whatever you want to believe about somebody. Like when you're at the grocery store and the old lady keeps talking to the cashier, you can say, gosh, she's taking all this time. Like you can make it something negative, or you could say, I wonder if she's lonely and that this is really helping her. Like you can decide that she's lonely right now and she needs somebody to talk with her. And maybe that's true. And if it's not true, who cares? Be empathetic anyway. Like why would you have to attribute negative intention to this woman? Like you wouldn't have to. So I just think that those are the kinds of things that are useful for people to just, if you're going to lie to yourself, tell yourself really good lies.
Where does the adversity come into play here? Because again, thinking about your story, right, and the brain surgery and how it catalyzed who you are right now. And I know a lot of very smart, talented people in my life that had dealt with a certain trauma of their past, and it made them to appreciate where they are, what they have, and what they can lose every day. So what are your thoughts on appreciation versus unappreciation, what you have, and that whole adversity topic that we touched base briefly at the beginning of the conversation?
I'll tell you, there was Freud. Everybody knows who Freud is, the psychoanalyst, right? Okay, so there's Freud. A lot of people know Jung, so they know Jungian, stuff. And then there was a guy that a lot of people don't know, who was Alfred, and his thing was exactly the opposite. So what Freud would tell you is that the reason that you can't have what you want right now and you're not happy is because you had this trauma in the past. That's what Freud would say. But that's not what Alfred would say. He would say something different. He would say, it can't have any impact on you anymore. You're already through the trauma. So it can't stop you from being successful. It can't make you be successful either. But I believe that it can make you successful because you have something to push against. And I think that Adler was right. And I think Freud was wrong. I don't think that they have any power over you except for the power that you give them. So if you give them that power and you say, I can't because, and you probably know people in your life that are like this. Well, this happened to me when I was a kid and now I can't. If whatever you tell yourself, your brain goes, got it.
That's true.
Check it. Yeah. And I think that's, it's important for people to understand whatever happened to you, the trauma, you're through it. I'm not saying that you weren't harmed. I'm not saying that it wasn't terrible and that you don't need time to recover. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying that once you decide to look at it in a different way and understand, I'm stronger now because I went through this. I'm better now because I went through this. And again, even if you're lying to yourself, it'll be positive for you.
I think every one of us, everyone who's listening to this, have a certain trauma or a battle that they're, fighting every day. And we always think that our battle is, hey, this it's hard, and I'm sure that it's hard for everyone, right? And I have my own story that I have a disease that I was born with. It's called varicose malformation of the leg. So I am not able to do some things physically, like play soccer or like run, whatever, right? And I have to be a very disciplined person with regards to my lifestyle, my health, my diet, because if I won't keep up with that, then probably I'm gonna have some problems with like a stroke or trump somewhere in the heart or whatever, right? So the point I'm making is, when I'm always thinking about the disease and the trauma that I was going through and fighting with this, helped me to be a very dedicated and very disciplined person, because I had to keep certain discipline, and it affected my work ethic, right? So I know what the work ethic is, because I know that I can lose something, right? It also helped me to explore myself and explore everything out there, right? And appreciate what I cannot do and what I can do, and being very careful about that, right? So whenever I am struggling with something right now, I know that I can beat that, but I also know that I need to be thinking not about, hey, this is what's happening with me, or this is what's happening whatever with my business, but I'm thinking about what I can do to deal with this, right? What can be done to deal with that? And it helps me to actually deal with things. And the more things you deal with, and we as entrepreneurs, we know that when you start dealing with a lot of shit in your life, it's easier for you to look at the problem, not from the, hey, this is the problem, but rather like look at the solution, right? Quickly.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that that disease of mine, was one of the catalysts for me being like that in my life, being that kind of optimistic about the life, right?
You are a perfect example of framing the illness in the positive way. Like, I would not be this disciplined. I would not be this dedicated. I would not be this successful except for I have this thing, right? That's it. And most people would go like, well, I can't because... And then they have a because. And you have a because too. You're like, because of this, I'm now this. And this is, you can do this with every negative event in your life. Nobody gets out alive without trauma. Like, nobody does. Like, if you're a human, there's going to be traumas in your life because that's what happens to us. It's part of our way. So
it's about who we are. We lose our dear ones, right? We have diseases, we are in accidents, we are unfortunate, we lose jobs, right? Everything is a kind of a trauma, but then the perception is not, and the decision that you're making after the fact is not, right? And how you're living with that. And again, you were live examples of, when you were 25 and, it's, it's something that people lose their motivation quickly, right? Like they lost they just get their hands down and say, hey, I cannot do anything with it, but you made it work for you. So now for people listening and who are battling with something that we just discussed, or a difficulty in their life, what has helped you to live through that period of your life, and generally what advices you can get to these people? Not necessarily the motivation stuff, but rather, do you have any practical advices with regards to what did you do on a daily basis with regards to maybe your routine, your habits, maybe the way you engaged with people or with yourself that kind of help you out in those tough times? Then maybe people can take on some of those advices right now in real time and make the difference.
I think if you can, and I don't know what people are struggling with, but I would just tell you, if you can get up and start moving, if you can start taking actions, whatever actions they are, if you have a group of people that you can spend time with and have a support system. Like, I have a big family, so I have 2 brothers, 3 sisters. I have a lot of friends. There were a lot of people. I learned how to play guitar right after I had my brain surgery. I had so many guitar players I knew. They all came over and they started teaching me how to play guitar because I was a terrible guitarist. Like, I couldn't do it, but I had all these guys that would come and spend an hour and a half teaching me. And I was finally allowed to hold a guitar on a stage, which I was not allowed to because they're like, you're so bad at it as a guitar player. But I got better because I had that. But I think you need people around you. I think you need a support system. I think you need to be part of a support system and helping other people. I do think that it's hard. And I wrote this book because I hope it helps people because you can reframe those traumas. You can find what you found in yours. Like, you have this thing and it made you stronger. And I think that that's what you should look for in these things, is not what did I lose? I lost a piece of my brain. Turns out what I have is still adequate enough. So I'm good. But I think that you have to try to put this in, what did I gain from this trauma, whatever it was. You gained something, maybe not the minute you have the trauma, you're not going to find that, but at some point it shows up and you realize, I'm stronger because of this. I love that you brought up people as the first tool that helps you to deal with the problem, because I'm sure that's the answer. And I know that, right now, the way the lifestyle is for a lot of us is we meet a lot of people, we meet a lot of connections, but they're very either transactional or not meaningful. And we are not
spending enough time building those relationships and cultivating them and appreciating the people that are around us, right? Because you cannot expect or hope that the people will be just around hanging out with you if you didn't put time and hard work into building those relationships, right? So I think that even if those that maybe you're just listening to this and you don't have something that you're dealing with at this moment, you're kind of happy, but I'm sure that there are some calls that can be made, there are some dinners that can be done, and some conversations, and kind of putting the hard work into building those relationships helped a lot later when something is off, and you can kind of have those people as the support system for you, right? And I always was grateful for relations that I have in my life with some of my close friends and relatives and brother, because I'm kind of working hard on building those relationships and keeping them, and that's why I'm not seeking out for some other random relationships just for the sake of the noise or something, right? Because you don't have time for that, right? You need to be focused, and then you can spend time. As you said, the life is short, right? So whoever you're spending this time with should be meaningful.
I'll say two things about this. Number one, it is short. And if I tell you you're going to live for 4,108 weeks on average, then you have to think about how many weeks does my mom have? Less, right?
Right.
Less. Your grandparents, way less. We will lose all these people, and I think if you start with that small circle first, these people that we have in our lives, that's the right place to start. I mean, there's a great book called Chasing Daylight, and that book is about the CEO of KPMG accounting company, and what happened to the CEO is he ended up with glioblastoma. It's a brain cancer that can't be, there's nothing you can do about it. There's no treatment. And what he did is he wrote down 5 circles, and he started with his family in the little part, then closer, and then friends, acquaintances, and then all the people at KPMG. It's Eugene O'Kelly is the author. He spent all his time for months with KPMG trying to wind down all of the relationships that he had built over his lifetime with them. And then about halfway through the process, he realized, I could have sent a letter to those people and spent all the time in this small circle here. That's it. And so you have to figure out who's in that small circle for you. And if you are interested in other books, there's a sociologist, an anthropologist type guy named Robin Dunbar. He's in England. I think he's in Sheffield. And he writes about evolution. And what he did is he studied primates. And it turns out that you really don't want to be a chimpanzee. It's hard to be a chimpanzee. You have to walk long flights. That's all you're doing is you're walking and you're chewing trees. I mean, that's all you're doing. You're just chewing leaves the whole time. That's the whole life. And then at some point, I got to pick nits off of you so you can clean my fur and I can clean your fur. And it turns out that you can only have like maybe 30 chimpanzees for this to work. So otherwise it's unwieldy. Humans, this is called Dunbar's number. Dunbar's number is you can have 150 relationships. That's how many you can have. That's how many a human can have. Now, the people that are really great at it, he says they can do 225 relationships. So you got a small number. 150's, I know way more than 150 people. You do too. So you have to decide like who gets your attention. The small circle is the one that matters the most, right? That is the one that you have to spend the most time on. And I do think, though, that there may be something that Dunbar's missing with that number is that we have a CRM. So, we have an outboard brain that can handle some of this for us and remembering who needs a card and whose birthday it is and things that we wouldn't be able to do without the technology. So I'm opposed to technology because I think it's between our relationships. I think it comes between our relationships. It makes us way more transactional than we should be.
Yeah.
But I think if you start thinking, I've got 150 relationships, who's going to be in that? I think that's a worthwhile exercise to say who it's in that small circle.
We do have a technology, but although like 10 years ago, probably you would use technology to kind of keep tabs on things and then say send cards or say, happy birthday or whatever, or some random holidays. But I think right now it's so transactional that no one does that anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So and you don't want that, because if someone that you haven't spoken to for like 5-10 years send you like a greeting or something, you're like, what the hell, right? How do I respond to this? Like, is it?
Yeah. I think when you think about like that scenario that you just said, so if you haven't talked to this person and then you send an automated birthday greeting, you didn't do anything. Like I always tell people, like if I were to go to the florist and say, send my wife these birthdays, this Valentine's Day, this thing, and just put it on my card, I get no points for that, right?
Oh,
none.
yeah.
No,
Absolutely.
you just automated it. There's no caring. So I don't give anybody cards.
Yeah.
I write them. I write them out myself. I write something very personal. I never go buy a card to anyone because I'm going to say something really personal rather than letting Hallmark do it.
Yeah. The same goes with presents, right? For me, the same. Like, if I were to buy a present, then I'm going to be putting my heart and my thoughts on that present. And it doesn't matter that it can be expensive, right? You don't go and check off the list. Oh, I bought this. Now I got to buy this, right? You just think about the person, what the person can appreciate, and, make them smile and fulfilled about the present, right? And that might be a small thing, but, that's just the amount, the time and effort you spend with our schedule onto something. That is the attention, and not the consistency of interaction that you might have with someone, right? Yeah.
But just look at how we do prospecting now. Like everybody's got sequences, and they're just running the sequence, and there's no real caring behind any of that.
Yeah, you should if you haven't met Dale Dupree, the copier warrior.
Yeah,
you should chat with him.
Well, we chat on LinkedIn.
Okay.
One time, he had a new baby, and I sent him a note on Facebook. I always like to ask people, like, how exactly did this happen?
Yeah.
And then they don't really want to tell exactly how it happened. So I always tease them with stuff like that. He's a good guy.
We spoke a lot about exactly the, what you just said, that because of the automation and pipeline and prospecting, we're not putting effort into actually building relationship and actually kind of putting intent and thought into, is it actually a good follow-up at this particular case? Maybe I can do something differently, right? Maybe I can kind of not follow up like that and just make this meaningful, right? Making meaningful interactions and not just logging in your CRM, the thing that you're doing, right? So
Alvin Toffler, the futurist, in 1965 described that the rate of change is accelerating so fast that it's going to rupture human nature. I mean, and it's going to be a problem for us because we're not able to keep up with the rate of change. Now it's going like this. So we're at the knee right now in the singularity, so it's going up. But the other thing that he had written in Future Shock in 1970 is that our relationships are going to be more transactional, and we're going to have people coming in and out of our lives all the time. And he saw that in 1970. I mean, that was a very different time. He could see that we were going to have people that we have a short relationship with them, then they're gone, and it's going to be different than it was in the past. And it's turned out to be truer than I think Toffler could have imagined.
You produced or wrote a lot of very original thoughts, extremely original thoughts. But I wanted to know, and I quoted you today. A lot of people are quoting you, but then can you tell me one or two original thoughts you came up with that you personally are mostly proud of?
I have a number of original things that I've done. I've taken the concept of triangulation and made it differentiation for salespeople. The one-up concept I took from a book but I applied it in a different way than it's ever been used. That's a novelty for me. I have so many things that I created, over 5,000 blog posts and 6 books. It's hard for me to remember all of them. Some of them end up in books. And sometimes when I'm looking through what I've done in the past for something, I find something and I'm like, I forgot I even made that idea. I didn't even know. I think a lot of it, this is what I would tell you. If you write every day, you're going to learn what you actually know that you don't know. You don't know that you know it. It just comes out and you're like, wow, I didn't even know I knew that. And it's new to me. It feels new to me, but I already had it in here somehow. I'm not sure. And then the other thing is I read different books than other people. I read books that other people don't read, and I get inspired and I get ideas and I get a way to think about something that I can apply to something else. So my creativity sometimes is looking at what somebody else did and say, how would I apply that over here? And that's one of the things that I'm doing is I'm always reading, and I'm generally reading things that other people don't read. I like books. The type of books that I like the most are like, these are my glasses, so I can see perfectly out of these glasses. But then if somebody came along and said, I can help you see 5 times better, and it's a book, and I read that book, and now I see something so much clearer than I ever saw before, that's all I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody who's gone so deep into an idea that if I can capture it, it's going to give me another way to see something that other people can't see. So I'm always looking for what we can't see. I know what I can see. I know that. That I already know. I don't need any help with what I already know. I want to know what I don't know, and I want to see what I can't see. So I'm always looking for books. So I read very, very widely. And I read things that most people would never pick up, especially like Sex Ecology, Spirituality by Ken Wilber, 900 pages before you get to the bibliography. Dense, Ken's a friend of mine. He's going to give me a blurb for the negativity fast. But I doubt very many people would want to pick this book up. First off, when it's this big, you're automatically like, am I going to be able to get through this? It's a big book. Yeah, so I like things like that. And I think that's where I get a lot of things.
Tell me this. Hemingway, Kerouac, Steinbeck, Miller experience life and travel to create original and inspiring novels, right? What do you do? Where do you get your inspiration from? Besides books and glasses?
I do love traveling. And I for 10 years, spoke 40 times around the world. So I've been all over places. So I love travel for that. I also love food. I also like to go to really nice restaurants. And I also think novels and movies. Like I'm going to see Oppenheimer today. I know I'm going to be thrilled with what I get to see today. That'll be great. So everything gets put in, right? And then it comes out when it's supposed to. That's the way I look at it anyway. I think it comes in. At some point you go like, that's the right thing for this.
Right. But you're very, very modest at this point because, I did the research, so I know some of the facts here, but scuba diving with biologists and doing hundreds of scuba divings. What are other interests that impacted your life profoundly or something that help you to create those experiences that you intentionally do?
I rode a bike 200 miles across Death Valley. I did that. I do all kinds of things like that. I've been in shark cages. I had a shark in a cage with me. It was only like this big, but it was still a shark. And I actually got out of the cage, and they said, "Why'd you get out of the cage?" And I'm like, "There's a shark in the cage." And they said, "No, the sharks are outside the cage." I'm like, "Not this shark. He's in the cage." And they were like, "You got to get out of there." Yeah, because they will still bite you. I've done all kinds of things. I played rock and roll in front of big bands. I've had a very good life of experiences.
Why do you have so many of those? And they're so different. And some of them are very dangerous, like with the shark. Like, what is the motivation? Is just to create more experience in the life, to make to have a more full, more meaningful life, to try things, or just you need to get that energy out somewhere? Or
I want to experience a lot of things. So, and I have experienced a lot of things. I've done a lot of things. I've had a lot of things that weren't great, but I've had a lot of experiences, and those experiences shape you. You know, I've had a lot of physical violence in my life. I've had a lot of trauma at young. None of this is me complaining, because I would not trade. I would not trade any of the things that happened to me for something else. I just never would. All of them were important to me. So I do chase things. Like if I could do,
right.
I can do anything that I want to do. So if I want to, I'll just go do it. I went to take acting training. I'm not an actor, but I thought it'd be interesting to see what that was like, and could I do it? It was really hard. It's harder than you think. When you're on a stage with another person and you're talking to them, like, you have to emote. I mean, and it's hard to emote, and unless you decide that you want an angry person, I can do that really fast. If you want an emotional person, it's harder for me. That's my childhood. So I've done everything that I've ever been interested in. I'll just pursue it. And right now I've been thinking about asking if I could go into a restaurant, not like a restaurant, but like, you know, a 3-star restaurant. Like, and what I'd like to do is just spend a couple days watching them do what they do. Yeah, I would love to be able to do that. So I'm going to ask somebody if I can do it, and somebody will say yes. You can come in. I'll tell them. I'll polish the forks and spoons. I mean, I'll stay there. I just want to understand how you get so much mastery at something, because that's what it is. It's mastery. Everybody's got their mise en place. They've got all the stuff in front of them. They have to do these things in minutes, and it has to be perfect every time. I just want to see it. So I told my wife, I said, do you think the refectory would let me come in and do that? And she said, no way. And I said, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. If I promise to polish the silverware, maybe they let me in. And I also want to do it because I washed dishes for 3 years when I was 13. And I miss that. I miss the physical thing. Like, most of the things that I'm doing is here. You know, it's not moving a big pile of dishes across a kitchen.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you have a benefit of choosing this action when you have a mood for it, right? So you can go and spend a few days, cleaning the dishes. But if, it's interesting how the things are different. So if you choose to do something, then you perceive this as the way that excites you. But if you have to do it, then it becomes unbearable for you, right? So if you had to clean dishes every day, then you're just like, oh, I hate this, right? I
don't think that would be true for me. I miss it. But think about what we do. You're an entrepreneur. So when does your work end? Never. It never ends. Now, you can leave, but you're thinking about it, and things are happening constant. When you're a dishwasher, at the end of the night, you put the dishes on the shelf, and you go home and you don't think about dishes. You never think about dishes. You're free from your work. And I miss that part of, like, you're done with your work, because our work is never done. The work that we do now, it just doesn't stop.
But that's not about the work. It's not about the work. It's about the person. Because when you mentioned the dishes, now I'm thinking about, okay, I would clean 100 dishes, but then what can I do to actually then at the same time clean 200 dishes at the same quality? But then what if we can, what we can do? And I was just thinking about like just kind of expanding and scaling and automating and sort of like some things that, so it's not about the dishes, it's about the motion of sort of like perfecting the actual dishes. As like what kind of dishes you are making. I need to bring on more better dishes. Like where the better silverware is. Oh, in UK, I will ship some of that, So that's kind of the brain works. But
that's your entrepreneur mind going right there.
Yeah,
That's your entrepreneur mind going like, well, look, we could go to London and we could get this, and then, that's how they think.
So I have people working in my company that have a very repetitive task that they're doing, right? And whenever I'm chatting with them and mentoring them, I say, hey guys, think outside the box. Like it's not about doing the repetitive things every day. It's about how you can create a value from what you're doing, but then spending less time on that or something. But it's not for everyone. As you said, like there's some people that wants to do that and then go home and just do something else, right?
Yeah.
Hey, any close-up message, Anthony, for the audience, for the listeners?
Well, first I'll say thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. We booked this so far ago, and I've been waiting for it for the whole time, and I keep seeing it on my calendar as I'm checking things. So I was excited to do this with you. Thank you for having me on. And if there's any call to action from my side, if you care about these sort of ideas, my blog is thesalesblog.com, and I will connect with you on LinkedIn, especially if you say that Michael sent you, because I have a whole bunch of people who are trying to pitch me badly, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Anthony.